Welcome back. Now you can see I've got the first little piece leaded in here, and when I was in the last video I was talking about horseshoe nails. So here they are, a little pot of horseshoe nails. So I use these to help keep everything in place. So now if I'm working on this part of the pattern here, if I press there, you can see that moved. So if I press there, that moves. So what I want to try and keep things in place, so I'm going to put this clear edge bit in here, like that, push that down, so that's all within the lines, so it's not going to, so that's not over the line there, so that is actually over the lead line, and what that would do, if the lead was in there, would push that up a bit, which then pushes your next piece out. So you've got to make sure all your pieces are within that black line. And so to hold that there, I'm using my horseshoe nail, a little scrap of lead to act as a cushion and also protect the edge of the glass. So the horseshoe nails are good because they're long, and so it keeps the hammer part away from the glass. Now they have got a flat edge and you could use them up against the glass. I don't, because I've done that before and it's chipped the glass, so I always use a little bit of lead as a buffer to hold it in place. And what that also does is actually hold the glass slightly up from the paper and in the right place, so it keeps everything sort of true. So now I'm just going to work down on this bit here. So I've got a little piece of lead there. So what I wanted just to say on this piece was really, you treat your lead with care. You know, like dragging it out of the box, stretching it, flopping it on your table, and then using a long piece like this to do a little bit like that, because that will bend. And what happens, what you want to try and keep is this heart nice and square. So here. So if that's upright like that, then that's what your pattern's cut to, because your pieces of glass should be upright as well. Does that make sense, like that? So when that's in there, that's all there. So if you twist your lead, it becomes slightly like that. So if you imagine my knife's the lead heart, it does that. So then that makes your heart essentially wider, so it goes from being like that, where the two bits fit, to like that. So your pieces will push apart. So it may look, oh, that looks nice on there, but because you've twisted it and been a bit untidy with your lead, the inside's twisted. So then that pushes your pattern apart. So it's, you know, always treat your lead with a bit of care. Always cut off a piece to work with, rather than trying to work with a long bit. Cut a piece off. You know, I could work with that, that would be alright, but I've got a piece here which will fit for here. So what I'm going to do is, because it's only got a slight bend, I'm just using my finger over the pattern. I'll put that over the top of the lead pattern and mark that angle there. So I'll go to the edge of my board, wiggle, and that's cut down. I'll make sure these bits aren't pinched in, and I'm also making sure that it's at right angles that way, which is not quite, so I'll just take a little shave off there. So when I put that up into here, I now get a nice join there. So because I use a pattern that's got the face width of the lead marked on, I can look down from there and see where the lead is, where I need to mark it. I'm just going to bend that around a bit more for the pattern, and that's there, like that. Now if you're finding that difficult, what you can do is you can have a piece of scrap lead, just making sure that's all nice and level, and you can hold that up to your piece. So with that against the pattern, I can bend that round, you can see, oh, that's where my lead needs to join there, so I'll mark that there, and then if I hold it around that way, the lead's coming in there, and you can sort of go, oh, it's there. So if you haven't got the face width on your pattern, you can use little offcuts of lead to give you where your joints are. So again, I've cut that. So cutting in there with a wiggle. Place that in there. So really I don't want this piece to move, so I use that little piece of offcut there. Put that in. It won't be in there for long with the nail. Put the nail in there. So you don't have to use the nail to bang it up tight. What you're doing is you want it to stop that piece moving away. So if you'd cut your pieces a bit loose, that would still move, but it wouldn't move past your heart line here into that piece. So I know this is all staying in place. So I'm going to get my other blue bit here, and I'm checking that now, that little squidge, against my pattern. Now seeing if anything's moved, and I can see that this is quite tight to the line here. So really I just need to give that a little tickle on the grinder. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll come back to showing you a bit more of the pattern. Right, so I'm back, well, again, and I've done this little corner here. I'm now moving on to the bigger part of the pattern with all the daffodil leaves. It's going to be a little bit more fiddly, but I thought I'd show you a bit there and what we're doing. I've got my horseshoe nail up there to keep everything in place, and I'm just working on this bit here. So I've angled the lead at the bottom here, and then I'm just going to see where that goes there, so you can see the mark. So I'm going to cut that angle there. And then make sure those aren't pinched over. It's really important that, because it's surprising, even when you're going to fit a piece in to get an angle, if these aren't straight, it won't be going in properly, and it'll be quite frustrating. So that one's going in there. So what I'm going to do is put this one in here. Make sure that's where it needs to be. And again, a little scrap of lead. In there. Can be a little bit fiddly. Why? Because I didn't straighten that bit. So even for your scrap bits of lead that you're using to hold pieces in, make sure they're not pinching now. How easy was that? So that's now holding that all in place, so I can then work on this piece here. So I'm bringing my glass up. I've checked it all on the grinder, and I'm just checking now that my lines are okay for when I lead. I've just seen a couple of bits on here that just need a little bits. I don't know, I have ground it previously, but you can still see, I don't know if you can see, that bit there is still flicking out a bit. So even though I've ground it, at the bottom it's not, it needs just a little bit more on the grinder. So I'll just go over to the grinder here. I've got a bit of light from above. So it's it's quite an old grinder. It's a Glass Star All Star. I know Creative Glass has got some very posh new grinders in, but this is still doing me quite well. So I'll turn it on. So I'll hold that flat on the surface there. So you're not coming in like this all willy-nilly. You're flat and in control, and just gently come across like that. So really, when you're doing your grinding, you just want to be doing a little bit. You don't want to rely totally on the grinder for making your bits fit, because obviously that takes time. And if you're making panels for a living, you know, time is money. So there, well, that's better now. I can see that's fitting a lot tidier. So that's good. So I've got my piece of lead here. So I've almost used all my lead, so I'll need to stretch some more in a bit. So I'm just following that roughly over the pattern. So I'm holding that, I'm looking down from the top, so make sure I can't see any of the grey face part of the pattern. So that gives me a nice, well, I'm going to do my angle there. So I won't bend that and cut the other one. I'll always do one end at a time. Cut it, offer it up to the pattern, because if you try and cut both ends at once, 9 times out of 10 you'll end up cutting it too short. So you can see I've got a nice short, this is almost the end of the length I stretched earlier. That's going to go in there. Following that round the pattern there. Making sure that's all in. So when I come down to join this bit here, I can either do a cut now to give that a little mitre, so this piece comes straight in, which I might do just to be a bit easier. So that's coming in like that there, so you can see that little mark. So that means I'll only really have to cut that other piece once when I come to like that. Yeah, that is just, now if you can you see the mark there? It's just running this side of the heart line. So if I tried to cut that with a knife now, it would just bend it. So this is where we use these lead pliers, and they're called lead dikes. And they've got a nice flat edge and then the pointy edge. So you can use the flat edge to give you a nice flat cut and an even cut. So I tend to use those mainly for doing little angles and joints. You can use them to cut with, but you tend to get more waste because it crushes it on the other side of the blade to the straight bit. So if you can use your knife, use your knife. You end up not wasting so much lead. So that's in there now. So you can see that when the next one comes in, it'll only have to be cut the once on that one. So down this end, that's the sort of angle I'm going for, and just there. That's what I'll be doing, that one. So with the lead, when I started, oh crikey, quite a long time ago now, about 10, well no more 10, hang on, yeah, it's more like almost 20 years ago. A box of lead, a 25 kilogram box of lead cost me £40. So if I'd had the hindsight then, I should have bought lots of lead, because now lead fluctuates with all metals, but it's about 165 a box. So it is expensive. So that's why I do say be careful with it. And now don't get all gung-ho and, hey, it's bendy. You know, take your time. That's the thing with this. You can't rush it. And you will get faster with practice. So now, I've just spotted another bit that's flicked out. You can see just there, there's a little flick out. And that's touching the heart line there. So if I put that in and then put that lead in, it would push that out, which would then tweak that glass, which would then move it. I might not notice that if I haven't got my glasses on, but I have. So just another little. Now, I had checked all this glass as I was going along, but it always helps just with the, once the lead's in. There, I'm happy with that now. So what I'll do is I'll go on next to do this next piece there and build it up, and I will see you in a minute or in a few minutes when we get a little bit further, if there's anything interesting to look at.